Hi, y'all. We're excited to have you here and want to welcome you to Flatiron School's Securing the Future, AI and Password Security. My name is Corey Mickelson. I'm the event coordinator here with Flatiron School. A big part of my job is hosting free introductory workshops like today's event to give you all the opportunity to meet some of our instructors and get a better feel of the Flatiron School experience. So a quick reminder, we will be using the chat as our main source of communication. So make sure that little blue button is switched from host and panelist to everyone so we can all chat together. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest today. Michael is here representing our admissions team. Go ahead and say hi. And we have
Hi everyone, welcome. And I'm gonna be dropping some info in the chat. And if you have any questions regarding admissions, let me know. I'm happy to help.
Matthew and Brian representing our cybersecurity team. Brian is also a recent Flatiron grad. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat as well. Go ahead and take it away, y'all.
Awesome. Thanks for that intro, Corey. Really happy to have you all joining us today. I know AI has been a really hot topic in the news as of late, and it's a really fun subject. There's a lot of crazy opinions all over the place on it, but we just kind of want to focus in today on how it applies to our lives, how it applies to cybersecurity, and what's kind of going on in the world around that subject right now. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared and we will get this rocking and rolling. Give me just a moment here. Go ahead and drop in the chat if you're not seeing this, but I'm gonna just roll right along with it. So like I said, our topic of today, it is AI and password security. Before we dive into it, just kind of want to introduce myself. My name is Matthew Redabaugh, as Corey said. I am an instructor here at Flatiron School. I've been with the organization for about 2.5 years. I also am a graduate of the program as well. So if you have questions for me about my experience in the school, me and Brian are both going to be here to address those. Brian, I work with really closely. He's on my team as well. Wonderful instructor here as well. So yeah, let's just start this off by talking about AI, machine learning, and deep learning. And I want to kind of make this note at the top that this topic has a wide range of opinions from experts in the field. AI is quite literally evolving in real time. And in the past several months, it seems that there's like a headline in the news about AI, the future of AI. Experts are chiming in to validate each other, sometimes discredit each other, sometimes a mix of both. I have my personal opinions on the subject, which I'm going to be sharing with you today. But just know that I am not an expert in this field. I haven't, done AI in like a higher education format. My knowledge base from this really just comes from my personal interest in it, especially from a cybersecurity standpoint. Podcasts and blogs that I've ingested, and then some use with those tools that are becoming very widely available to just about everyone in modern day. Now, the kind of different things that come up in AI are AI, machine learning, and deep learning. Those terms can mean something different to different people, especially depending on who you're talking about it with or who you're interacting with or hearing this information from. But I kind of want to like start off by just really kind of defining those terms and how I understand them. I really like this particular slide here just because this is how I really view these three terms separately. Artificial intelligence being the kind of wider umbrella, with machine learning being a subset of that, and then deep learning being an even further subset of that. So whatever is considered deep learning is also considered artificial intelligence, but what's considered artificial intelligence isn't necessarily always deep learning. So what is it that sets them apart? AI, the overarching goal is to create computer programs that have the ability to perform what we would consider intelligent and human-like functions. Really short kind of definition is just it's giving the computer programs the ability to work as the human brain does. Most people who work in this field would agree that we're really far from reaching that level of programming in the sense that it's doing exactly as the human brain works. A lot of that being because we still don't entirely understand exactly how the human brain works. But thinking about that, I know with the introduction of these large language learning models like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Bard, the conversation around these has gotten really foggy, but it's a hot topic. And in my opinion, one of the most interesting use cases for AI actually was back in 2016 with the introduction of Sophia. Sophia is this humanoid robot that was introduced in 2016, I believe at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. And it was the first robot to have been granted personhood and citizenship. Sophia is now technically a citizen of Saudi Arabia, which is pretty fascinating. Sophia itself, though, it can hold simple conversations and it has facial expressions to react to what's being said to her and then how she is talking herself. Her code, it's 70% open source. Critics who have reviewed her code have said that really Sophia is essentially just a chatbot. So she's a chatbot with a face. Her conversation is primarily pre-written responses to prompted questions, but her existence, it's sparked a really interesting debate over the possibility of having AGI or artificial general intelligence sometime in the near future. I personally tend to side with the critics that we're pretty far from that. And while Sophia is incredibly cutting edge in terms of robotics, she's far from having anything that would resemble consciousness. And again, this is just my opinion here. But some of the other use cases that artificial intelligence come, as we see in like the modern day world are things like real life speech recognition and understanding of languages. There's a lot of tools out there that do that, as well as AI being used in travel assistance. I would consider your regular like travel mapping apps like Google Maps or Apple Maps or something like that. That's a version of AI because it's scanning roads, creating efficient routes. It's gathering information from a lot of different resources, other cars on the road to provide the user with the most efficient route. Now, moving down the bubble there, machine learning. So that's a subset of AI. It's set apart by its ability to learn and respond differently and uniquely by ingesting large amounts of data by using human-built algorithms. So this is done through either supervised learning or unsupervised learning. With supervised learning, the computer is given a specific set of parameters by whoever's developing that to compare data inputs. And then where unsupervised learning, the computer's fed data and the algorithms themselves allow for the computer to find those relationships on its own. So it's unsupervised. It still has human intervention in the sense that humans are building it out to find, hoping that it will find certain relationships, but it's letting the algorithms kind of run on their own. So this machine learning, it's used a lot in the cybersecurity world, right? There's a lot of machine learning tools that are being currently developed and built upon, and they're really like, a lot of them are kind of like data aggregation tools. So they ingest large amounts of data from computer networks, and in the cybersecurity field, we're using these tools to highlight security risks based on what the data is telling us. Like, for example, some sort of malicious access to sensitive information on our network by an attacker. From our perspective, this makes our jobs a lot easier. As like a threat hunting role in particular, instead of having to have a security alert and then actively respond to a threat, we can use machine learning tools and give them data about prior attacks, and then also knowledge of the organization's systems and networks to understand that an attack might be taking place before anything actually happens. As you can imagine, these tools, they are far from perfect, but they are definitely a step in the right direction. And yeah, in your life, you might experience some machine learning tools from music platforms like Spotify or SoundCloud, where there's algorithms that predict like the best song choice for a user based on their preferences. YouTube having a similar algorithm there. And if this is a particular subject that you find that you want to dig into, if you are a coder and want to like move into the machine learning world of coding, a lot of the tools that machine learning tools are being built with, or the coding languages that machine learning tools are being built with, are primarily Python and C++. So if you have an interest in the subject or aspirations to get into it, those are the two languages that I would point to as a good starting point. Now, moving down to the bottom there, deep learning, that's like the really intense one. Again, a subset of machine learning, even farther down. It's more precise in the sense that the biggest difference here is that it functions mostly like machine learning, but it will correct itself, whereas machine learning requires human intervention to make those adjustments. So deep learning will sometimes even like write its own code in the moment to change the way that the program works. We see this today in computers that can do like image and pattern recognition. So there's tools out there where you can just throw an image on the screen and the computer will respond with, you know, this is a cat or this is a stairs or something like that. We've also seen the one that is particularly interesting to me, at least in terms of cybersecurity, which I'll get to in a moment, but with computers being able to ingest segments of like sound bites from people talking and then being able to mimic their speech patterns. I know that this has been kind of controversial, particularly in the Hollywood world right now. Also in the music world, there's people who are building songs and using sound clips from artists and then recreating their voice, even though the artist was never really involved. This happened with like a Drake and Weeknd song. Neither of those guys even knew what was happening. And then you have people on the other end of the spectrum, like Grimes, Canadian pop artist. If you're not familiar with her, she's actually very much embraced this, and her kind of take on the subject is to allow her fans to make music with her voice. And then I think she like cuts a profit share. I'm not 100% sure about that whole thing. I haven't looked into it too much, but from my understanding, I think that's how she's kind of adopted this into her, her platform. But another one that is very well, I wouldn't say very common, but becoming a lot more common is self-driving cars. Those are definitely deep learning technologies. They fall into this category because they're actively ingesting data about conditions of the road, conditions of other cars that are on the road, their speeds, road hazards, other things like that, and able to in real time correct the car it's operating with. Now, AI and cybersecurity. Let me just, sorry, I'm going to roll into this chat real quick. Okay, cool. No questions yet. All right. So one of the most important tools in cybersecurity is something that we call a SIM. So what that stands for is Security Information and Event Management. Traditionally a SIM tool, it would be used by a security operations center analyst to give those people who are working in the Security Operations Center a really clear picture of what's going on in an organization's computer network, what's happening on their applications, who's logging in, when they're logging off, and be able to detect any malicious activity and then provide alerts to those analysts so that they can respond accordingly. Now, with machine learning tools, these SIM tools have been upgraded so that if a security event occurs, that response is actually automated instead of the security team having to do this manually. We call these tools SOARs. So what that stands for is Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response. And to give you an example of how this would kind of look in the real world. So if a user in your organization happened to be hacked and their account was being used by someone else, with a SIM, if working properly and configured right and as intended, that the security team would get an alert that an account being used looks like it might be used maliciously or was logged into from someone who wasn't the user that it should be. And the security analyst would take that alert into consideration, inform all the necessary parties that are involved, probably take that account offline, potentially even take down the network that account exists on in that organization. And you would have to do all these things kind of manually and letting people know that this is going on. And yeah, it takes a lot more kind of footwork on your own terms to get the pieces moving to make sure that whatever malicious behavior doesn't get out of hand. Where with a SOAR, whatever response would normally be taken in that circumstance is just going to happen. SOARs used a concept known as a playbook. So it would be a pre-built automated remediation step that initiates when certain conditions are met. So there's still human intervention there. And as I've stated previously, this technology isn't perfect, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, makes our jobs and our lives a lot easier. We also see AI being used in the cybersecurity field to help our security personnel identify and classify phishing attacks. So having some sort of machine learning in emails to just like flag those immediately. It also helps with malware analysis. We can use AI to help us with incident response. Like I was saying, with those SOAR technologies, having those automated remediation efforts. As you can imagine, if an incident is happening and you have an incident response team that needs to actively jump on something, having that kind of buffer period with the computer actually doing some of the legwork is really helpful. And yeah, the other thing is that AI can be used to gather to predict fraudulent activity on networks and address potential liability before anything happens. With machine learning, cybersecurity professionals and their teams have a better chance of protecting themselves against zero-day attacks as well, which is an attack there where there's like a vulnerability on your system or application that was previously unknown to the developer, and an attacker is able to exploit it. With machine learning technologies, that vulnerability could possibly be identified before that exploit actually happens. So you could run tools against your network and identify a vulnerability that might have not been known otherwise. And in addition to that, a machine learning tool may be able to identify an intrusion on a network. Maybe we don't know what the vulnerability is, but we can see that there's malicious activity happening on our network and mitigate that before any data is stolen or anything breaks. So that's kind of the good side of AI and cybersecurity. There's also the bad side, good and the bad with AI for sure. Bad side is that these same technologies that are being used to protect our networks can be used by bad actors to make their lives easier and make their hacking more robust. So if machine learning tools are implemented on a network, first off, a really proficient hacker would be able to identify this and act accordingly. There very proficient hackers might be able to deceive the machine learning tool into thinking that they're actually a regular user. And AI is currently being used to help hackers crack passwords, which we'll actually get into in a moment here. But in my opinion, there's like two really kind of scary cases for AI being used by hackers. First one being that hackers could produce far more robust and convincing phishing campaigns. A major cause of breaches is still a very human element, phishing being one of the most common ways that hackers cause data breaches. There's research done by Deloitte, I think a couple of years back, that was saying that 91% of cyber attacks begin with a phishing email, which, if you don't know, by the way, that's an email that looks like it's from someone you know, but it's actually from like a criminal. And at the moment, phishing attacks are generally pretty easy to identify. That's not always the case. But a lot of the times, if there's an attacker from a different country, they might use bad grammar in this email. They'll send it from an email that's like obviously faked. It's, if it's coming from PayPal, it would say like paypl.com or something weird like that. And also with these phishing emails, they'll try to like hide links. And if with a keen eye, you can notice that those links are falsified and not taking you to where it's telling you that it is. With the introduction of AI, though, a lot of those problems, problems for an attacker can be fixed by them. So the other thing that kind of goes hand in hand with this is what I was talking about earlier with this mimicking speech patterns. So what they're doing in the music world by taking people's sound bites and then turning them into songs. I know they're doing that with like podcasters as well. This could very easily, this same technology could be used to have like a spear phishing campaign. So I can easily imagine a world in which, Twitter employees, for example, are being bombarded by emails from Elon Musk, quote unquote, or fake phone calls from him because his voice is very well out there and it can be easily recreated by AI. And this isn't just for people who are very public figures either. This could happen with any CEO, any personnel from any organization. Actually, just last night, I came across an article. It was actually like a Twitter post of an organization that was they had like a prompt that could create like South Park videos. So you would just put in a prompt like, this is what I want the movie or the episode to be about. And it wasn't great, I'll be perfectly honest, but the voice mimicry part of it was like kind of frightening because if you're familiar with the show South Park, they like have celebrities in there all the time, and they had celebrities in this fake episode, and Elon Musk actually happened to be one of them, and his voice sounded pretty accurate. But yeah, that's scary to me. I know it's scary to a lot of people in the cybersecurity field, and it's something that we just need to, now knowing that this is out there, using these tools, making them better so that we can identify these things in the future. And in addition to that, ChatGPT, it can easily be mistaken for an actual human being because it can converse seamlessly without using spelling, grammar, verb tense mistakes. So that ends up making it an excellent tool for phishing scams as well. The last and kind of like scary use case that comes to mind for me is these AI tools being able to generate unique and targeted malware. From here, I kind of actually wanted to pass it off to Brian because I know he's like worked a lot with ChatGPT and has had some experience like using it to code and things like that.
Yeah, I actually wanted to make a quick addition. So when you're talking about phishing, something else that's a little frightening is if you have a specific person you very much want to target, if you can find some audio of a relative, for instance, and this has been done, a hacker can have even a few audio samples of a relative of that person talking, and they can generate a very convincing phishing scam where they make a phone call that sounds like a person's relative. You can Google this. This is actually happening, and it has happened. So that's another kind of frightening addition, because it would be quite easy for them to make an urgent sounding phone call that one of your relatives is in sudden financial trouble and needs you to transfer them some money. Like, that's not hard at all. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. Exactly. So we have to be more on the lookout than we ever have been before. Because and this is where my experience comes in, because I'm just going to be honest. I started learning computers in any sort of depth in about August of last year. So I've been at this for about a year now. In any serious depth, I was always fairly tech savvy. I'm a musician who runs recording sessions from my house, so it's not like I was completely inexperienced with tech, but at any sort of coding, programming, automation, any of that, brand new. First time I touched Linux was August of last year. And because of AI, I am currently able to write fairly complicated programs. I've written little scripts to demonstrate problems, to demonstrate issues in cybersecurity. I'm in the process of writing a teaching tool for Linux using a fairly complicated search algorithm. So, and this is from somebody who's been in computers for a year. So all you really need right now with AI is imagination, a little bit of know-how about what computers can do. And AI becomes an extraordinarily powerful tool in your hands. And so, fortunately, I have a mindset of wanting to protect data and I would never want to use it for anything malicious. But unfortunately, there are quite a few people out there who of course do. And so essentially what AI has done is, for anyone with a bit of know-how now, they can write some pretty complicated stuff. Now, not necessarily using ChatGPT, it has some guardrails to prevent it from generating anything that might be perceived to be malware. But I am sure that somewhere on the dark web, or even somewhere on the just web is an unlocked AI engine that people can have access to. And we certainly can just rest assured that governments all over the world are currently trying to develop AI that specifically will help them write very nasty viruses to target things like infrastructure and everything else that you could think of. So yeah, it's just this we're kind of living in a brave new world right now. The fact that a newbie like me can write a pretty deep search algorithm to search through a database of commands, can generate long lists of Linux commands, and write a fairly complicated program is testament to that fact. And so, yeah, we have to be on the lookout everywhere, from people who are new to foreign governments to everybody in between using this maliciously. I mean, there are already automated RATs, remote access Trojan generators online. There are automated phishing campaign generators online. This is before AI. There are already little programs you can find online to release a phishing campaign that gives you a backdoor into someone's computer with a few clicks. I've seen demonstrations of this by, people who are not showing you. Well, you see that I could. Well, exactly. Worm GPT. I'm sure that exists. I'm sure Rat GPT exists. All those things will exist. I mean, I will not show code, but because I don't have access to like malicious code, because I'm not trying to do anything of that sort. But I'm just trying to say that the capabilities of these AI engines are staggering, and so it just means we just have to be on the lookout more so than ever before. Anyway, I'm just going to pass it back to Matt, and we'll keep going.
Yeah, and I, kind of want to top this off by saying that there's good actors out there using AI for the betterment of people, and then there's bad actors out there using it for their own selfish purposes. So it's a bit of an arms race right now. I was gonna go into the password cracks, but I'm actually gonna move to this the last slide, which is a quote, just to kind of like you know, put some positive spin onto this too, because I don't want to spend too much time on the threats here. But this is from Sal Khan. He's the founder and CEO of Khan Academy. He says that if we act with fear and say, hey, we need to just stop doing this stuff, what's going to happen is we're going to fall into this place where the rule followers are going to pause, slow down, but the rule breakers, they're just going to accelerate, which leads to what, in Sal's opinion, is the dystopian state, where good actors have worse AI than the bad actors. So we really have to fight for the positive use cases. And right now, in Sal's opinion, since he is an educator, the most poetic use case to him is that if AI can be used to enhance HI, or human intelligence, human potential, and human purpose.
And I can so strongly attest to the reality of that as a recent student. You know, the idea that, you know, many computing problems are very hard. Many things you bump into in the world of computers are extremely complicated. I struggled for ages. I still struggle to understand C code. It's like an alien language to me. But I can just log into ChatGPT and say, hey, give me some examples of some C code. Explain it to me, comment it for me line by line, show me how this works. And it's an incredible tool for learning. It's just, I've learned so much using ChatGPT. It blows my mind sometimes how quickly you can learn a concept when you have an AI assistant. So that's the positive.
Truly. Yeah, if you haven't messed with it too much yet, definitely give it a check out, because it's very interesting, especially in the tech space. But I mean, I've like come up with recipes, like all sorts of like silly little things.
Think of the most complicated concept that you struggle with, and then ask it to explain it to you like you're 12. That's one of my favorite things to do. Just give it to me in simple English, and it'll explain things in terms of toy boxes. But hey, that can be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So like the title of this is AI and password security. So what's going on the password security side of this thing? Well, recently there was a study done by an organization called Home Security Heroes. Some pretty shocking information came out of this. They were using a specific tool called PassGAN, where it ran through a list of like 15 million passwords and processed them. And it found that this AI tool could guess 51% of common passwords in less than a minute, 65% in less than an hour, and 81% in less than a month. If it's 5 characters or less, it was pretty instant. 6 characters or fewer, it was like 4 seconds, regardless of the complexity of the password. And more than half of the passwords that they ran through this engine were cracked in less than a minute, and then 71% in less than a day. And the other crazy thing with this is that even 18 character passwords, if you know anything about password security, one of the things they say, a longer character length is going to be harder to crack. If it was just a numerical code, PassGAN would be able to crack it in 10 months or less. So what does that mean for us? This is kind of my selling point recommendation kind of part of this. I'm not affiliated with any of these things that I'm going to be talking about, but I do highly recommend kind of taking these steps if this is something that is on your mind. So generally speaking, if you talk to anyone in cybersecurity or just the tech world in general, some of the most common password mistakes are reusing the same password on multiple accounts. Perfectly honest here, definitely have been one of those people that did that in the past. I have since kind of moved beyond that. I've been an internet user for years though, so I'm sure there's old websites and accounts that I don't even access anymore that have similar passwords to somewhere else. So especially key sensitive accounts, you know, things like bank information, things like that. And then another common mistake is using simple passwords. So things that are just common in the English language, probably want to stay away from. And yeah, investing in a password management tool is very helpful in kind of alleviating these problems that you might run into with password security. The first thing I'll mention in terms of recommendations is checking out this website. It's called haveibeenpwned.com. It's a website that allows internet users to check whether their personal data has been compromised in any data breaches. So they have like a database of when passwords have been dumped like onto the dark web. They have that database in there, and then they'll check your username and email against that database to see when the leak was, because a lot of this is public information. Like if a company gets their users account information, they want to notify the public of this. So that's a really good starting place. You can actually like sign up for a service from them to see if your email appears in their database like later on. I know I have that just through like Experian, like a dark web kind of monitoring for me for my email. So something to invest in if you don't already. And if you do follow through, go to haveibeenpwned.com, find that your email has ever been compromised on any particular account, definitely a good time to make sure that you update those passwords, and especially other passwords that might be similar to that one if you are reusing yours. And then second recommendation is to start using a password manager software. So there's a lot out there. Again, I'm not affiliated with any of these, so I'm not going to like sell you on any one in particular, but some of the ones that I know are very reputable are Bitwarden, 1Password, Dashlane, NordPass. And what these tools do is they make managing passwords across different accounts a lot easier for the user. It takes a little bit of a learning curve to get used to, but once you get in the habit of generating the passwords with this tool, it's very second nature, and it actually makes it a lot easier. But what these tools will provide for you is, very, very unique passwords with combinations of capital and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. And then they'll also make it so that you can set like a character length. So if you need to have like a minimum or maximum characters, you always kind of want to err on the side of being a longer password. You can set how long you want the password to be. And if a particular account doesn't allow you to use special characters, which is very common due to different types of attacks that are being used, you can kind of set that functionality on the password management tool to say, don't use these characters, use these other ones instead. And, like anything in the tech space, not any single one of these is like be all end all kind of one-stop shop for entire security. And it might be that these organizations aren't as safe as they are claiming to be. LastPassword recently did undergo an attack, and they leaked passwords of their users. So, use with caution, be aware of this. But yeah, I just kind of putting that caveat out there, that, you do kind of want to have those other security things set on your network to protect yourself as well. And just to kind of say, with my experience, I use Bitwarden. It's free, has a really great reputation, and I can use the same Bitwarden account on my computer and on my phone. So if I'm accessing Amazon from either one of those devices, the password is just stored, and I don't need to like have an entirely different login. It makes it very, very easy and simple. Yeah, and this was my last slide, but we already went to this one. So that's the end of this presentation. I appreciate you all joining us, and happy to stick around and answer any questions on this topic. Yeah.
I would also just like to add, sorry, one thing about password managers. So a lot of people are afraid of using a password manager because then the manager might be breached. Of course, that has happened with LastPass, but it should be made clear though that In that sense, only the hashes of the passwords have been leaked. And those take a while to crack. So if there's a breach of a password manager, you will have notification that you need to change all these passwords, and you'll have time to do it. So it's still worth it using a password manager, even though the risk of the breach of the password manager is still there.
Can we add
Yeah,
the list
absolutely.
of recommended password managers to the deck?
Yeah, yeah, let me do that.
Thank you guys so much. If you all have any questions, go ahead, feel free to drop them directly into the chat. Somebody asked for the link to check your info online.
Oh, was that have I been pwned? You mean? Oh, to check your, to see if
Oh,
your
yes.
password has, yeah,
Yes.
got it. Okay.
Will you drop that one in the chat, please? There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a fascinating little site. I think that's also, am I wrong, Matt? But isn't that the basis for the RockU password list too?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the database that, so it just as going by the whole cybersecurity principle that every tool is also a weapon. You know, all those breached passwords have been compiled into a text file that people use in their password crackers.
Also, if you want to learn more about the cybersecurity program we have here at Flatiron School, we are hosting an info session that starts at 2 p.m. So you're more than welcome to hop over to that. I will drop the link in the chat.
Brad asked in the chat, what are some affordable ChatGPT AIs to test and learn on? The ChatGPT 3 is actually like free right now. You just have to set up an account, and that is pretty powerful. As far as other free ones, I mean, Google Bard.
Yeah, the Google just launched theirs, right?
What's that?
The Google just launched theirs not too long ago. And then you have Microsoft's.
Yeah, so Microsoft, I know the Bing search engine itself has incorporated ChatGPT 4 into it. That's not one that I've worked with really. I don't know if it has the same kind of like output as you would if you literally just were using ChatGPT 4 directly. Because it's just directly incorporated into their search engine. So it's kind of producing a little bit different material. Daniel, you said, can you write them down on your paper? I'm guessing you mean like passwords. If you're talking about that, I would say maybe in your own home, if you feel very, very comfortable and secure with that. Not a terrible idea, but don't do that in the office space. That's
I definitely have a client that does that.
If you need to write down a password somewhere, writing it into a note on your phone is probably better since phones are quite secure. So that's definitely better than writing it on paper.
And you can also, like, I know that on like iPhones, for example, you can encrypt the notes on your phone. So like you can save a bunch of things into a note file and then encrypt it even further so that like you have to have a password even to get to the notes. You can,
Yeah.
but there's always the cloud.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say notes get saved to the cloud, but let's just face it, there are absolutely no perfect solutions in cybersecurity. There's just trade-offs, you know? If you write down passwords in your phone, you could lose your phone or somebody could see it. If it's on a password manager, the password manager could get hacked. There's never a risk-free world.
George Soul asked an interesting question on our Q&A, which said, how will passkeys change how we use or need password managers? I know different organizations are kind of working towards eliminating passwords entirely and using different authentication methods. Like the obvious ones that come to mind are anything like biometrics related. So facial recognition, you probably have that on any modern day phone, biometrics with your finger. So you don't even really need a password anymore. And I know that can be a little weird because it feels a bit about like an invasion of privacy. But in terms of security, there's really there's no better way to do it, in my opinion. Even though those can be tricked as well. So
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's actually been said that generally speaking, sending a code to a phone is no longer a recommended mode of MFA, for instance, which is why you'll see a lot of sites have switched over to authenticator apps, which can't just be sent out to the phone through a cloned SIM card, for instance, So that's been an interesting thing about multi-factor authentication lately as well, that you're seeing fewer and fewer of the texted passcodes.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank y'all for this great presentation. I can't wait to share it with everybody that joined us and everybody that wasn't able to make it. And we look forward to seeing you at our next event. If you want to learn a little bit more about the cyber program, we are hosting an info session directly after this. I did drop a link in the chat and I will drop it again. And we look forward to seeing you at another event soon. Have a great night, y'all. Bye.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.